Okay, welcome back to our teaching, The Spirit of Man. Understand this teaching is just a quick overview, just to give us an idea, to give us concepts that we can hold on to try to clear up a little bit of the confusion that people have about the spirit of man. And you know, it's still, even though I'm bringing it as simply as I can, it's difficult concepts to grasp because it's really multidimensional. And that's hard for us to understand. We've all heard the term we are made up of body, soul, and spirit. Okay? Well, body we understand. Soul, okay, that's our personality. What do we mean by spirit? Well, that's something we're not familiar with really, so we just ignore that part of ourselves. Well, the reason we're not familiar with it is because we don't live in it or practice it as much as we should. You see, we should be living in the spirit and making our soul follow us. Your spirit is your mind. Your mind and your cognizance of God and of spiritual things is a manifestation of your spirit. Your spirit is the body God gave you at conception that lasts for the rest of time and beyond time, for all the ages to come. Your soul has been imprinted onto your spirit. So now the two are inseparable, even though they have different appetites. What do I mean by that? Well, your soul, since it is fleshly, it was born from your own DNA, your genetics, and your life experiences. Its base nature is turned or bent toward the flesh. So it's mindful of fleshly things. It is your appetites for fleshly things. But your spirit and your mind of your spirit is bent toward God because it came from God. Isn't that amazing? And we're going to talk about that more in a minute. And we're body, soul, and spirit. So your body is alive. You're able to use it and animate through your body like I'm doing right now because of another spirit. And it's the spirit of life itself, which is in everything that's alive. Same spirit. It's in the grass of the field. It's in the one-celled animal or single cell. It's in that great elephant and the huge whales. The same spirit of life that makes flesh alive in this dimension and directly from God. It's the energy in the battery. It's the Energizer and the Energizer Bunny. And it makes all things that it's in come alive. But the spirit of your mind gives you a mind and knowledge of God. And either a mind of a man or the mind of a beast. Understand, the spirit of your mind is referring to animals. Okay, either a human animal or an animal of the field. Because plants don't have a spirit of the mind. But they do have spirit of life. But they don't have a mind. They don't have a soul. But a beast does. Now, very interesting, Daniel chapter 4, verse 16 and 17. And for clarity, I'm going to read from the ESV, English Standard Version. And it's speaking of King Nebuchadnezzar. Now, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon thought that he was like a god. He even allowed them to build a golden statue of himself and forced everybody to bow down and worship the statue. And he thought he was the greatest thing the world had ever seen or ever will see, and that people ought to worship him. Even had 3 Hebrew children thrown into a burning fiery furnace for not bowing to his statue. Then the Lord said, well, this is enough. I'm going to show you a thing or two, Nebuchadnezzar. And so he had a dream. And the Lord gave Nebuchadnezzar a dream, and he couldn't interpret it, and Daniel interpreted the dream. And here's what the Lord said. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him. And let 7 periods of time pass over him. Verse 17, the sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will and sets it over the lowest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw, and you, O Belshazzar, which was Daniel, tell me the interpretation. Because all the wise men of the kingdom could not make known to me the interpretation. So here's what happened. It's interesting. Let me turn here to the Hebrew. The word mind is a Chaldean word. Isn't it interesting? It's not even Aramaic. It's Chaldean. It is the Chaldean word libab, which is interesting because it's, let me see here. This was spoken in Chaldean. So they interpreted it that way here for us. But they put mind, the Chaldean word though, means heart or mind. Heart or mind. Now what's interesting is the context then of course narrows it down and determines. So you'll see some people, some translators will translate it as heart. Some translates it as mind. So how do you determine which way it should go? Well, see what the context determines. Okay? So if we see what happens here, change from that of a man and let a beast's mind or let a beast's heart be given to him. So what happened to him? Did a beast's mind or beast's heart be put within Nebuchadnezzar? Well, it was his mind. It was his mind, because if it was his heart, he would have the emotions of an animal, right? But if it's his mind, he would begin to think and act like an animal. Now, what happened to him? Nebuchadnezzar was walking along his beautiful terrace of Babylon and looking at all of his great buildings and all of his great artwork and all of his hanging gardens, which were world-renowned, one of the ancient 7 wonders of the world. And he said, look at this. I made it all. I, great Nebuchadnezzar, am the best and should be worshipped. And the watchers, who are angels, the Chaldeans called them watchers. The Hebrews call them angels. The angels said, that's it. you're done. Because the Lord said this is going to happen, now's the time. They took from him the mind of a man and gave him the mind of a beast. Now this is interesting because this is Strong's number in the Hebrew 7307, the equivalent word. In the Greek, it's 4151, the equivalent word. And it means the spirit of our mind. It's not talking about the heart or soul. It's talking about the spirit of our mind. So suddenly, he went from being a man that's cognizant of God, and he has a mind that he can think things through. He doesn't depend on just instincts. And he's given the instincts in the mind of like a deer. And suddenly he was eating grass. Now what's fascinating about all of this is if you think about the bigger picture here, his wise men were standing there when Daniel brought the interpretation. His wise men knew what was coming. His wise men had already seen and heard Daniel. His wise men knew Daniel knows his God. And if he says, thus saith the Lord, here's what's going to happen to you. So everybody's watching for it to happen, and it didn't happen. The prophecy didn't come true. The dream didn't come true. They went day after day after day, and everything's the same. So they went, I guess it was false. Daniel must have interpreted it wrong until the day Nebuchadnezzar finished filling his cup of pride, standing out on his terrace. And he's standing out on this beautiful terrace that overlooked the beautiful city of Babylon, the seventh wonder of the world, with the beautiful hanging gardens. And he took it all in as his own pride. And then the watchers, the angels, sat there and went, cup's full. And they took from him that human mind with its cognizance of God and of self and put the mind of a beast in him. So he suddenly thought he was a deer. What's amazing is his wise men, his guards, everybody knew of the prophecy. So he fell on the floor on all fours and started kicking and thrashing like a wild deer. And they yelled for Daniel to come. And he came and he looked and he told them, take his clothes off, lest he soil himself. He's not a man anymore. He is a man, but he's not. And they set him in the field and they watched over him. The guards had to guard him. Because they all knew that Daniel warned them, it's 7 years, but he's coming back as king. He's going to be told and he's going to know who was faithful to him or not. So all these wise men and guards guarded him with their lives. Because when he got his mind back, he was going to be looking for who was good to him and who wasn't. I mean, you treat a king well, right? So they watched over him with their lives and made sure he didn't get too cold and vice versa. But he couldn't have clothes on. He thought he was an animal. He just, he's going to soil himself. So he just ate straw. His hair grew out. They couldn't cut his hair. They couldn't cut his nails. He needed them now. And he just crawled on all fours like an animal. But what's amazing is his soul was still intact. He lost his mind, became as an animal, but his soul was still intact, which is amazing. Because it meant he was gathering his memories the whole time. When he got his mind back, his memories were fully intact of his time as an animal. He remembered everything. So he knew which guards were good to him and which weren't. He was ready to reward those who were good to him and those that weren't. Isn't that amazing? So the spirit of the mind is literally a gift from God. And when he was given that mind of a beast, he literally thought as a beast. He followed his instincts, in other words, because he was no longer cognizant of God, or really even of self. Only of need. Only of need. His need to eat. He didn't think of food that he used to know because he was given the mind of a beast, of an animal. Fortunately for humans, we were designed to eat grass. Did you know that? And green things. Our bodies were. That's why we have a really long intestine. That's for digesting grass. It's not for digesting meat. We were allowed to digest meat only out of necessity because of the fall of man and because of the curse that fell upon the earth. But our bodies, with the long intestine, you're not supposed to eat meat because meat begins to putrefy before it can be fully digested in a long intestine. That's why cats and dogs have a straight and very short intestine. They're designed to digest meat. Okay, so it can't putrefy before it's out of their bodies. So that's why we're designed the way that we are. So he could eat straw. He could ask North Koreans. How many North Koreans have lived on grass and straw and bark? They even have books because of starvation. They have books that they hand out, pamphlets showing people how to harvest certain bark and stuff in North Korea to keep them alive because of starvation. Just a total shame. But anyway, my point here is this. The heart or mind is better translated mind, as the ESV has done, because that's what it corresponds to in the Hebrew is Strong's number 7307, which is the spirit of your mind. Isn't that amazing? Praise the Lord. We'll continue this on our next video.